involving tomato sauce to show you how easy it is to make multiple sauces. And I love every week to order lots of the organic tomatoes because then I can make this instant sauce. I used to think $8 a can of tomato sauce in the glass jar. Oh, so high. And you'll see how we do a super 2-in-1 today. Save time in the kitchen. 1 in 9 saves time. Let's get started on our tomato sauce and talk a little bit about calcium regulation. Calcium plays huge roles in the body. I like to use a serrated knife for tomatoes, but this will work. I have my blender. I'm going to cut the stems out and quarter the tomatoes and put them in my blender to blend them up easily. Let's talk a little bit about calcium regulation in the body. Calcium plays a huge role in maintaining fluid balance in the body. And fluid balance occurs in many different areas in the body, but some of the main areas are in regards to the capillary beds and the arterial system and the vascular system and the kidneys. And if you think about it, the heart, the kidneys, and the blood system, they all work together to maintain proper fluid balance in the body. And I was dreaming about it in my little siesta before this, and I was thinking about how amazing it is that every single tiny microscopic cell in your body has to have a blood supply. You know, if you has to have oxygen, just imagine how teeny tiny all these capillaries are going through your body. And these capillaries, they have a smooth muscle wall, and this smooth muscle wall is partially regulated by calcium, and it helps maintain the vascular tone of the smooth muscle in the arterial beds, the vascular beds, the arterial beds, the arteries, the veins, the capillary beds. And calcium is there all along maintaining that arterial tone or the strength. You might imagine it as like a tomato. Ooh, this is going to be fun. So if you have here, for illustration's sake, the center of the tomato, and you have blood running through here, all this, the outside of the tomato, is going to be smooth muscle. If you can imagine that, all this is smooth muscle, and this has a tone to it or a strength to it. And if the calcium helps regulate contractions, so it's either contracted down like that, or it opens up and it allows more blood flow through. And more blood flow through means also relates to how much water is inside and outside. And you also have a hydrostatic pressure in the body, and you have solute balance. And solute balance not only occurs in the kidneys, but also in the bloodstream, where depending upon that pressure in the blood vessel walls, you can have more or less fluid loss. And edema happens edema is when someone's all puffy and swollen, kind of like me before my half-ass gua sha face massage this morning, which was about 2 minutes instead of the beautiful 15 minutes that I like. Not gua sha, I don't do gua sha, I do working on the muscular and the fascia layers to reduce 20 years of tension and gripping. But another story, I do help pull the edema out, the fluid retention, and that can you see someone who's really puffy a lot of times, that's not fat, it's edema, and it's because their interstatic pressure, the pressure in their body of their blood system, of the cardiovascular system, is not appropriately regulated and does not have the right amount of tone. And when it doesn't have the right amount of tone, as well as the right amount of solute balance, because you also need solute balance, water follows a concentration gradient. If you don't have enough solute in the blood, the water is going to pool out of the bloodstream. So sodium and calcium both play, and potassium and magnesium all play roles in regulating that solute balance in the bloodstream. And this is one reason, since these nutrients work together, it's important to get all of them. And I have more tomatoes that I can blend, but I can add more. And you want to have balances of all of them as well. You should not be eating one. We often pay attention to calcium, but we don't pay attention to magnesium. And you really need to have 2 calcium to 1 magnesium, but remember, this is the minimum. So you can have much higher magnesium and lower calcium, and that's okay, but what the problem happens when a lot of people are getting higher calciums, but they're not getting high enough magnesium because they're not eating the plant foods. So it's recommended by our great lords, the recommending entities, the controllers of our health and lifestyle, that we should have double the magnesium. But when I start thinking about it, I realize start looking at it, I realize that's minimum. Now I just cook my tomatoes down, and it is that easy. Sometimes I even skip cutting the core out when it's these Roma tomatoes. The hair limbs, you do need to cut the core out. And I'm gonna make extra here. I have one recipe, which is our vodka tomato sauce. Has no vodka, no cream like normal sauces, don't worry. Normal vodka sauces, which are made with vodka and heavy cream. We actually have some hacks that you're gonna see that are much more nutritious. And then, even easier, I'm just gonna make a pure tomato sauce with some basil. And then I'm just gonna throw in other random tomatoes. This is actually tomatillo, but no one's gonna know because I wanna have as much as possible because I'm making lots of pasta. And so back to the solute balance. Calcium is very important for keeping those solute balances, both indirectly through the mechanisms of solute concentration in the blood and the extracellular fluid. Remember, water has to follow an osmotic gradient. If you don't know an osmotic gradient, check it out on YouTube. I'm not your third grade science teacher. I'm your master of nutrition. You can call me your priestess of nutrition if you like. Maestro. Master seems so manly and patriarchal and masculine. Not that I have a problem with patriarchy. I mean, it's great. Not that feminism is that much greater. They both have major issues. Anyway, we want to have a balance of that, of calcium in your body. And this recipe that we're doing today is going to provide 500 milligrams of calcium per. Both recipes provide between about 420 to 500 milligrams of calcium, which is a huge amount for 500 to 600 calorie recipe. And I was shocked when I did the nutritional analysis of this gorgeous, tasty recipe, wondering what I was going to cook for this calcium video. Thinking about I wanted to do calcium soon, and then looking at this recipe, and I thought, well, calcium is it. I was going to do iron. Calcium not only plays a role in the solute concentration, but calcium is a key intracellular signaling molecule which regulates sodium and water reabsorption in the kidney in multiple places. It also plays effects on anti-diuretic hormone, and which is a huge hormone, a hormone that plays a very large role in the expansion of fluid during pregnancy, which increases by 30 to 50%. That is very important in regards to pregnancy, so we want to make sure we're eating tons of leafy greens. And if you're pregnant, it's easier to add in dairy than when you're lactating. It's better to get most of your calcium from leafy greens and seeds because the baby can be sensitive to dairy, especially cow dairy. But this recipe, today we're going to use some feta cheese. If you don't use feta cheese, actually I used to sneak in tofu into a recipe like that, and when you're used to eating plant food, you don't even notice it. You're so hungry when you're nursing, you're like, give me the food. We're gonna put this on the stove to simmer. You can see I've got it down, and this will simmer for about 2 to 3 hours on low heat, depending upon your temperature and your pot and your flame and the rate that heat reaches your tomato sauce from the bottom of your pan. I like to use a thick bottom pan so I don't burn and I don't get boiling. And then we're going to come back and make our pasta when this is cooked down. Our tomato sauce recipe just comes pure like this, and my recipe calls for a kilo or about 2 pounds, a little more than 2 pounds. It doesn't matter, you can use any amount of tomatoes. I've blended up 5 tomatoes before and made a teeny bit of sauce in a 1 cup pan to serve some macaroni when I don't feel like cooking and there's nothing to eat. And then the other recipe, our vodka sauce, calls for 3 Roma tomatoes. We're just going to pull out amount of this and make that other recipe. A stitch in time save. Let's chop our red pepper and our onion for our vodka cream sauce. The recipe calls for half of a red pepper and half of an onion, and I'm going to chop the full red pepper so that I double task my kitchen cooking time and my labor, and later I will put the other half of the red pepper on top of a Buddha bowl. Just some rice and chickpeas that are already cooked in the fridge. maybe fry a zucchini and done. I mean, so easy. Calcium is a key mineral to regulate intracellular and extracellular fluid volume, and you have more calcium in the bloodstream and the extracellular space than you do inside your cells, and this helps regulate the fluid volume, and that calcium plays a key role in maintaining the osmotic pressure of the cells. And if you have calcium, if you don't have enough calcium, that can lead to edema, it can lead to low blood pressure, poor oncotic pressure in the body. And this is really important because calcium plays a role in the fluid volume expansion that happens during pregnancy, where the fluid volume of the woman increases by 30 to 50%, especially in the second trimester. And calcium does this in a number of ways. One of the main ways it does this is through its effects on antidiuretic hormone, in the way it also influences water reabsorption and sodium and other solute reabsorption in the distal tubules of the kidneys. These are a place in the kidneys where you have increased reabsorption of solutes and increased reabsorption of water, so you're not going pee all the time. So the majority of the water that you consume is recycled in the body. In one way this happens is with calcium. And calcium, it's kind of like a ubiquitous intracellular signal. We shouldn't think of calcium as just this compound that's having the direct effects on the antidiuretic hormone or other hormones in the body. Calcium is the intracellular signaling compound, so it helps direct things in the cell. For example, in the case of water reabsorption in the kidney tubules, you have calcium that helps with the production of adenylate cyclase. In the case of calcium, you have the production of adenylate cyclase, which increases the production of CAMP, which then goes on and phosphorylates PKA. These peppers I'm going to put with the use for my Buddha bowl, and this pepper is smaller. I'm going to cook those a little bit more. These are going to be fresh and kind of crisp. I'll cook it all at the same time in order to have my proper Buddha bowl. What happened here? Let's stir our onions and our peppers. Calcium, by maintaining the oncotic and osmotic pressure in the body, you help prevent edema, you maintain vascular stability. The prevention of low blood pressure and vascular stability, which is assisted by calcium, is very important for maintaining placental blood flow. And maintaining placental blood flow is key for your baby to be able to receive its nutrients. If you don't have blood reaching your baby properly because there's something off with your vascular tone, you're going to have problems. That your baby's could have intrauterine growth restriction. You could develop preeclampsia, and in fact, in cases of preeclampsia during pregnancy, usually there is decreased excretion of calcium in the urine, and normal pregnancy has increased excretion of calcium in the pregnancy. And so this just shows that the nutrient calcium is not just for intracellular signaling. The intracellular signaling that calcium is engaging in is regulating fluid volume on a number of levels, and it does this by other mechanisms too, such as with antidiuretic hormone. For example, calcium plays a role in the generation of CAMP and adenylate cyclase, which then goes on to phosphorylate PKA. PKA then goes and phosphorylates your intracellular vesicles that contain aquaporin, a little hole, a little channel, like a little inner tube, that are contained in this whole little intracellular vesicles in the body, and then those are go and put in the membrane of the kidney in the distal tubule, where you have water reabsorption occurring. Then you can have more water reabsorbed by the body, so you're not peeing all the time like you're always doing in pregnancy. This is regulated hormonally by antidiuretic hormone, and this plays a key role in pregnancy. During pregnancy, you also have the parathyroid-related protein, which is kind of like parathyroid protein, but the parathyroid-related protein also helps maintain the function of ADH in the body. Let that cook a little while. And next, we need to cook our pasta. During lactation, the mother has to provide a large amount of calcium to her fetus, and this happens through parathyroid-related protein. It's similar to parathyroid hormone, which regulates calcium balance in the body. Calcium during lactation comes from the mother's bones, and it's regulated by this parathyroid-related protein. And the parathyroid-related protein stimulates the bones, it causes the bones to release calcium, so you can give your baby calcium. And there's a huge amount of calcium that goes into the milk ducts, between 200 and 400 milligrams per day. It's huge. When think about it, your RJ is 1,000. You're giving half of that to your baby, or close to half of that to your baby. Where's the rest of the calcium coming from that you need? It's coming through your bones, because you're not going to be able to, you don't consume that much. And even if you do consume supplements for increased calcium, this hormone still is active and still causes calcium to be pulled from the bones. And that's how vital it is. Some nutrients, they're not hormonally regulated. Calcium, it's hormonally regulated. You have to have these mechanisms in place. And the fetus has active uptake mechanisms to give calcium to the fetus during pregnancy. And active means that it goes against its concentration gradient. It doesn't just flow there. This shows how important calcium is for building the fetus's bones. And the fetus during pregnancy, it accumulates about 30 grams of protein, mostly during the last trimester, to build the baby's bones. You might wonder, well, if the lactating woman's calcium is being pulled from her bones by a hormone, what happens? Does she just lose all her mineralization? Is that why we get osteoporosis and cavities after pregnancy? Yes and no. After weaning, the mother generally reaccumulates bone at about 2%, at about a 2% rate. Yeah. We'll do some more food. Okay, I'll have pasta ready for you, okay? But if you're hungry till then, you can have some of these nuts. Look, take a handful of pumpkin seeds. If you don't like it, then you're not really hungry. Pumpkin seeds are high in zinc, and actually zinc and calcium can compete for absorption in the body. Fun little fact. So if you're eating a large source of zinc, it's best not to mix it with the calcium source. And that's not too much of a big deal, but this especially may be important if you're on the lower ends of one or the other in your levels of consumption. You don't want any competing happening in your intestine. So the mother, generally after weaning, her bones reaccumulate this calcium. And I think this is the time actually that you should be taking a supplement, or if not taking a supplement, paying special attention to the calcium that has been lost from your bones and teeth and goes to your baby. During the 3rd trimester, you also have a lot of calcium loss. You can take a vitamin B6, has been shown. A vitamin B6 supplement during the 3rd trimester can help with calcium loss, and as well as during lactation. You can take that supplement or pay attention to eat. Especially, I used to eat huge amounts of walnuts. I wonder why. Very high in B6 during lactation, and that was helping me prevent demineralization of my teeth and bones. The calcium loss that a mother experiences during lactation is recovered during weaning at a rate about 2% per month. And this is the time I think that you should take a calcium supplementation, or make sure you're getting your calcium intake. Lack of calcium can lead to a number of things during pregnancy and after birth. The baby's skeleton will have what's called nutritional rickets, where the bones are not strong and they're very weak and liable to break. You can experience yourself osteopenia, your baby could have, or hypocalcemia, your baby can have hyperactivity or emotional problems. It's so surprising how so many things really come back to nutrition, and we always want to turn to drugs or say, oh, I've got these genes that make me hyper or ADD or hyperactive or anxious, when really a lot of it comes back to in utero nutrient intake, low birth weight, preterm birth, preeclampsia, intrauterine growth restriction, and a lot of these are related to the way that calcium affects the smooth volume and the vascular tone in the body, and has helped maintaining that oncotic pressure in the body so that the baby is getting enough blood flow and getting enough nutrition to it. And when the baby doesn't get enough nutrition, when it doesn't get enough blood flow, it's not just missing calcium, it's missing biotin, magnesium, potassium, protein, everything that the baby needs, folate, all the B vitamins, zinc, iron. If the baby's not getting enough of these nutrients, you're gonna have problems later on down the road, and that's why I'm so committed to this. And as your pregnancy and lactation nutrition expert, I think it's really important to look at all the nutrients, and that's why I think you should check out my book, Staying Fed, on nutrition during pregnancy and lactation. And it's actually a cooking manual designed so you get 100% of your RDAs 5 days a week with easy meal plans that make easy meals. This is actually more complicated than most recipes. If you want to check out more in-depth science like what I have today, then I suggest checking out my manual on nutrition for pregnancy and lactation, which covers all the vitamins and minerals and some of the unclassified. The same material that I'm talking about today, that's called Nourishing Generations, and that's the first book I published. So you can see I have these beautiful peppers and onions, and I'm just going to kind of like the big ones push to the side, save those for my Buddha bowl, and we're going to set these right over here for when we're ready to make our sauce. Let's get started on our 2 sauces that we're going to make for this. Sauce number 1, super easy. It is simply the tomatoes that we have cooked down. We're going to just leave it like that. And all we do with this sauce is we're going to pour this off here. I'm going to pour it towards you so you can see how beautiful that is. And this sauce is as simple as having the cooked tomatoes, and then you add in your basil leaf. And basil is very delicate to bruising and damage. It's also high in iron, surprisingly, and a wonderful pregnancy and lactation food. You can even make a tea out of the extra basil that you've got. It's very soothing and nourishing to the system. A little cup of basil tea can hydrate you upon waking or help you go to sleep. And I just add that basil into there with the pasta, and then you add your feta cheese, which is going to give a large percentage of the calcium. I think this recipe has about 100 milligrams without the cheese and about 500 with the cheese, the feta cheese. And so there it is. There you have it. That's all you do, and you toss that with your pasta. I just am taking a small amount of my pasta here, and I'm going to put some of this tomato and basil sauce on top, and that is beautiful. And the recipe calls whether you use sauce, plain tomato with basil sauce, or the vodka sauce, sweet potato sauce. Both recipes call for 200 grams of fresh cheese, or feta cheese, queso fresco, depending upon what kind of cheese, just a mild crumbly cheese. And we're going to put that on there, and Flash is going to tell me how good it is after he stirs it up and starts eating it.
If the baby doesn't get enough nutrition, the baby will have problems itself.
That's right, the baby will have problems itself. If you're interested in more in-depth science, you can check out my book.
Say it.
The previous recommendations that use this data set had higher recommendations for calcium intake, but the next time they did the recommendations, the 2020 to 2025 recommendations, these are actually based on studies from 2011